Hello and welcome to You, Me, and Stephen King. I'm Justin, and of course, this is going to be a little weird this time because I'm doing it over the phone with Kevin, who is
Hi.
now Kev Kev.
I don't know if that's like an upgrade or like a demotion.
I think it's an upgrade because it means that you have a nickname.
All right. There we go.
All right, so this time round, we did a sequel. Instead of going in chronological order, we are doing Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining. There will be spoilers for the book, and there also will probably be language. I'm probably not going to do a whole lot of explicit language, but just in case, here's your warning. So let's just hop in to Doctor Sleep. I got a summary prepared. Doctor Sleep is the sequel of The Shining, and it follows the life of Dan Torrance after the terrifying events of the Overlook Hotel have finally ended. Well, I mean, it was blown up due to the carelessness of the caretaker who forgot to let the steam out of the boiler at the end of the last book. Anyway, Dan Torrance lives with his mother for a while growing up without his father, traveling to various places, living in Florida for a little while where the ghosts of his past literally come to haunt him, tracking his shine. Dick Halloran, the dude from way back when, teaches him a new trick, which is to lock away his fears inside a box he can manifest inside his head. Eventually the ghosts starve and fade away in these psychic boxes. He grows up learning to cope with his abilities by drinking them away, just like his father. But eventually, Dan hits a point in his adulthood where he no longer wants to be hungover and no longer wants to hate himself for stealing money from people and living in shambles and almost seeing a baby boy eat cocaine. Dan joins AA, moves to New Hampshire to start anew, and at about the same time his abilities start to resurface. He hasn't seen or heard from Tony since he started drinking, but Tony returns to aid in his next adventure. Dan gets contacted by a baby whose shine is 10 times stronger than his own, and her name is Abra. And as soon as it's revealed that a group called the True Knot is on the hunt for little kids just like her, they want to drink and eat her essence to remain young. Abra, through years of telepathic communication, enlists Dan as her helper to extinguish the True Knot and save other children with the shine. So that's that.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you did it because I finished the book a while ago and I needed that recap. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for listening. All right, so first things first. Did I miss anything? Was there anything that you remember that I didn't cover?
Let me run through it in my head real quick. You got Abby Dew. She lives with a suburban family life with her mom and dad, but she has a sick grandmother who she's super close to. You didn't mention the doctor. Not Dr. Sleep, but the other doctor.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there were a lot of characters in this that I was just like, I could have done without. Like, I love the posse, but my mind, so you're talking about, what is it, Dr. John Dalton?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's this link between Abra and Dan. So Dan knows him from AA, and Abra knows him from, he's her pediatrician, I think, right?
Yes, from when she was a little baby, and he was the first one to witness her having some sort of telekinetic powers. At her birthday party, she blew open all the drawers in the kitchen and hung the spoons on the ceiling. And that's when the doctor made a connection to our lovely Dan Torrance, because he recalled Dan being able to read his mind and backtrack his memories. But for some reason, he did not introduce the two. We had to wait until they were like 3 or 4 years later for them to actually meet one another, and the doctor had nothing to do with it, really. That was kind of a bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
It would have been some more build with that. And another thing that I would like to point out is the True Knot. And I thought this was interesting because similar to Salem's Lot, how the vampires claim they were the first beings here for forever. They've been around since ancient times. The True Knot claimed the same sort of entitlement, where they had been around for ages and ages since people had settled, and they were the true species. And despite all of those claims they took, it was really just like a little traveling group of camaraderie pals, like just a little get together.
So what did you think about them? Like, what did you think about Rose, and I guess who was your favorite baddie out of the group?
My favorite baddie out of the group. Okay, well, there were a lot of them to go through. Rose, I will side with Abra in that Rose is a coward. Rose was shocked when Abra kind of startled her and pushed her out of the mine, the first connection they made, which no one's ever been able to do with her. And then Abra set a trap for her, which that was my favorite scene. And after the trap, Rose was definitely cautious and scared. She refused to do anything else that put her in direct contact with Abra. Instead, she would send her followers to do her bidding for her. And I was kind of like, that is not... I feel that as much as an antagonist as she was the main antagonist, and she stayed in the background for a lot of it. And I kind of didn't like that. I felt with as much confidence as she portrayed with her kin, that she should have taken the reins some more.
Okay, so Rose the Hat is a woman who has been living for a really long time and has been drinking and eating steam, and steam is essentially the shine that lives inside people. But she's the leader of this group called the True Knot, and they travel in little caravans and set up in little KOA camps, and sometimes they look like old people, sometimes they look like young people. It just depends on when they've last eaten steam, and most of them have other abilities like psychic abilities. One girl can like make herself pretty much invisible. One girl can
like locators, telepathy over long distance. Like everyone's got like a niche.
Yeah, and Rose leads them, and so their whole main goal is just to live a long time by drinking people's shine. So Abra watches them from a distance murder this little boy and drink his shine, and then Rose
they can only do, well, they could do it from killing, but instead they gruesomely torture the child.
Yeah, so
because they get the most steam.
Yeah, they get the most steam from actually doing the murder and creating fear. So anyway, so Rose sees Abra essentially watch them. So they both see each other for a split second, and then immediately because of that, because Abra is so strong, she becomes their next victim, which is really where the conflict in the story comes from. One's trying to survive the other one.
You know, I just made an interesting connection, although I could just be making this up because this is how my mind works. But listening to you say steam and steam and steam, I realized that this whole book is about their steam, and then in The Shining, the whole plot was ended with the boiler exploding from the buildup of steam.
Yeah, I thought
so
of that. So
there was like so much steam, and then this one, like the True Knot, is at a loss of steam, and here we are with both Dan and Abra, who have tons and tons of steam. Everyone's getting all steamy over here.
Yeah, actually, let's keep going with that, because I realized that while I was reading it, and I wrote it down about the boiler. I thought it was
before we get that, you have to answer your question about your favorite antagonist.
Oh, who was my favorite member from the True Knot?
Yes.
Wait, did you answer who your favorite was?
No, but I said my thoughts on Rose.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. My favorite.
I would say my favorite would probably be. I'm trying to remember his name right. The Crow.
Yeah.
I thought the Crow was like an interesting baddie.
Yeah, I think my favorite one is Snakebite Andy, just because one of my favorite villainous abilities is to make people do whatever you want them to do just by suggesting it. So she freaked me the hell out.
Is that? I thought she could only make you fall asleep.
Oh,
I was like,
no.
she's better than a NyQuil.
She's like a mesmerist. So whatever she says, you're influenced by and you do it. That's why when she did she can put people to sleep. That's the most simple of her abilities. But she left, like, in older guys' faces, she would say, this pain feels good. You are sleeping so much, and so, blah, 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 fall deeper. And she would claw their faces out. And then she would say, like, she harassed a family, like a husband and wife, and was like, now your wife is going to dream this, and she's not going to be worried that I stole something from you two when I stole it and leave. And then she said, and you're going to dream about all of the little girls that you want to do stuff with. And then so when they both wake up, they're like, wow, I had wonderful dreams. What did you dream of, honey? And he has to, like, lie to his wife.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know this is completely different for right now, but they expand upon her ability in the movie, and she literally tells someone to kill himself, and he does it. So she, and I've seen this ability on other, like, TV shows and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just
it's mind control,
an influencer.
basically.
Yeah, but you have to use your voice. So she was freaky. I liked her, but she was freaky.
I was very confused when reading the prologue, jumping from, like, Kid Dan to the True Knot and Andy and everything. I was very much at a loss at the beginning. I didn't know what was going on, who he was talking about. And then when the story progressed, Snakebite Andy was nowhere to be found, and I kept thinking that Andy was the grown-up version of Abra, and that it was one of these where the book started with the ending, and we were going to read how Abra grew up into Andy, and then that just wasn't the case.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Andy just died.
Yeah. Andy had nothing to do with it, really. She was kind of just there.
Okay, so let's go back to the theme. I was thinking about... I was trying to make sense, and I still am trying to make sense of the Overlook, because you don't really get an origin story, but Dan in this book keeps talking about how that place was evil, and it made me realize that maybe the way that the Overlook worked was by storing the steam inside the boiler, but the boiler got so full and the steam didn't get released by his dad at one point for its own safety, that was what caused it to explode. Because the True Knot had those canisters where they could keep steam, but they released them from the canisters so that they could use them.
Yes, but I feel they only use that for, like, in case of emergencies, or to, like, superpower themselves up before, like, some psychic duel. Like they did.
Yeah.
But when I was reading it and it was revealed that the True Knot's base is where the Overlook stood, I read it as more of, like, the Marston house, where so much evil activities took place there, and it just became like a beacon for the supernatural and subhuman, whatever you want to categorize it as. And so even though the building itself was there, like the Marston house, it was the buildings, the walls, the floors, and everything that were just saturated in that evil. But I think because of how much was going on and how strong it was, and then with the influence of young Dan's steam there and everything that was happening, I think it kind of dissipated into the land, and that was like the center point.
Yeah, the True Knot, one of their other places that they listed that they go is Jerusalem's Lot.
Exactly, and that's why I was like, okay, there's these certain spots that are going to. But at the same point, I remember that in Jerusalem's Lot, when we were reading it, the Marston house had lost its evilness. So, and then I guess because the vampires were still around, maybe in the same sense, it was more the town itself had the evil instead of one building.
Maybe it's spreading.
Yeah. It's like a disease. We're all diseased.
So, okay, I know we talked about the true not favorite character. What is your favorite character? Who is your favorite character in general?
In general. To be honest, I don't really feel that I had a favorite character. I did not like Dan. At the beginning, I was just like, okay, you are your dad. This is going to be a repeat, and I was out. I was not interested in it. I like, checked out. Goodbye. Next character, please. I would say probably Abra's grandmother would be one of my favorites.
She's a good one.
She's a good character, but I still just could not get into any of the characters in this one that much. I think if I had to pick one, it would be Abra's alter ego. The Valkyrie woman. When she pictured herself as in her trap, and she was Daenerys Targaryen riding a Valkyrie with a spear and everything. None shall pass type stuff. I picture her like a super majestic, and I'm like, this is how she embodies herself as a strong woman, strong, independent, psychic woman that don't need no knot. So I'd say that, but me, as far as the character, not for this one. What about you?
Actually, Abra was my favorite one. I thought she was adorable, the way that she would leave little notes for her Uncle Dan on the blackboard, and then, like, she would play her music psychically on the piano, and she wanted to be a little magician, so she hung spoons from the ceiling, and I just thought she was so cute.
I thought your favorite would have been the cat.
Nah.
The cat that knows when you're going to die.
Yeah,
comes to say your time is up and like, bye, I'm out.
That's pretty cool, but I just thought she was a cute little baby, and I loved hers and Dan's relationship.
All the way throughout, though, even when she was a child to like the preteen, or?
Yeah, every bit of Abra, like through her whole development, I loved her so much.
All right. I guess if you had to pick one, Abra is a primo candidate.
Yeah, she was cute. Okay, so was there anything in this book that actually scared you?
Nothing that scared me. I will say that some of it was just a little predictable. The trap for Rose that Abra had set was by far my favorite, and not so much scared, but best adrenaline pumping. It's the most like go moment for me, because I was expecting it to just be like, alarms, whatever, and then she'd like shut a door, but she went all out crazy, like drew a line, like, you stay over there, Rose, saying, like, put her in her place. So I pictured Rose trying to, like, you've got the little Abra, like, riding her bicycle or whatever she was doing. I can't really remember what she was doing in her head when Rose was going through the filing cabinet. And I picture Rose trying to intimidate her with her hands stuck in the filing cabinet by transforming into this, like, you watch Samurai Jack, like the one evil dude, black guy with the red lips. She'd get, like, really tall and show, like, her one big tooth. And then Abra just turns around as her Valkyrie woman, even bigger. It's just like, you are nothing. And she, like, tucks her tail between her legs and just focuses on getting her hand out and fleeing. And then I thought it was cute how after that she's like, Uncle Dan, I did it.
I like that you imagine her as a 7-year-old. Like, that's such a 7-year-old voice. But she's like 13, I think.
I know she's 13, but she's just like super proud of it. And like this innocent little, she's like, because she's never met somebody who has The Shining, so she gets really excited. I'm just like, look at her, she's so woo. Oh. What was your scariest scene?
I don't, and it's not that it's scary, because I don't think there was anything in this that actually scared me, but again, it goes back to Abra, that she had this smile that only Dan ever saw, and anytime that she smiled, he got a little like put off, because it wasn't like her real smile. It was like a smile in her head that she was like, yeah, this evil person deserves to die, and that was pretty much where the smile came from. So I think she did it when she actually attacked Rose the Hat, and then there were a few moments where they like linked psychically with Rose the Hat, and Dan was like, oh, I don't think that she's seen Abra's crazy smile yet. And then Abra says, I'm coming for you. Don't worry about coming to me, because I'm coming to you. And she does the little smile.
Yeah. I picture it like a smirk, like she's curling one side of her mouth.
Yeah, that was not necessarily scary, but kind of like freaked me out a little bit.
I think, so I'd like to add another part that I think would creep me out. If I was a character in this, let's say I was Crow after Abra's kidnapping, what would creep me out is you've got her in the car and you're thinking, oh, you've got this 13-year-old girl, and it's Dan inside her body.
Oh, yeah.
If that was me in the car, I'd be like, what the heck do I do? What's going on? I don't know. And I'd probably crash into a tree.
Well, I liked that he was just like, well, for some reason, she stopped kind of talking like herself. She sounds sort of like somebody else. And he just shrugs it off.
Yeah, he's like, oh, no big deal. So she can do all kinds of stuff.
Did you have any favorite quotes?
Favorite quotes? Oh, well, I don't know the word for word. My Kindle is dead, so I can't pick up and look at my bookmarks that I have on it. But when you've got, what was his name? The guy who was like, you're my uncle, but he was too old to be Abra's uncle.
Billy?
Billy, yes. And Billy's distracting Rose, and he's like, hey, bitch, check this out. And he does cartwheels. I love that.
Oh, my
part.
gosh.
I just started laughing so hard at that. I'm like, oh, that's me under pressure.
I think my favorite quote, and this is just, it means a lot more to me because it comes from Dick, but he says, when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. And I liked the whole metaphor and idea of everything coming back around. Like, Dick's grandma taught him how to use the shine, and then Dick taught Dan how to use the shine, and now Dan is teaching Abra how to use the shine. I liked the whole, like, circular, everything comes back to the way it's supposed to be, and life is just a wheel.
Yeah, there's another moment in the book that's a wheel, and that's when, after everything's done with Rose, and then Dan, the last patient he puts to sleep in the book is the guy that worked at the hospital with him, who was just super abusive and physical to all the other patients at the hospital. Can't remember his name. That was like another moment
I don't
when
remember.
they went. Yeah, he was not important enough. That was another moment where the book went full circle.
Yeah.
Question
I like
for
that.
you, and I kind of already know this because I asked you this before, but for the sake of those listening, what was your reaction when you found out about the whole family tree in this book?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it made sense.
Yeah, so I was on the opposite side of the spectrum. I did not like that whole, you're really my uncle and we're related, you're my mom's long-lost brother, blah, blah. I kind of checked out when that happened and didn't really care about what was going on with the grandma at the hospital and everything. So I was like, okay, I'm out. This is some touching family reunion thing, because so many other people that in the first book, Dan was talking with Dick Holler, and he's like, there's plenty of people you'll meet all around with The Shining. And it made it seem like it's just something by chance. and it's those born with the call on their face have the stronger sense, and they liked it just kind of being a chance. You never know who's going to have it. And then it became a chance and family tree thing. And I just kind of didn't like it. And part of me started piecing it together. If you remember in your first podcast, when you were talking about Carrie and how everybody in that town probably had a theory, they all had some sort of powers or whatever. And then I was like, oh, so then is everybody in The Shining that it's referring to coming from that one town? And so everybody's just secretly related to each other that we don't know about? Stephen King likes to connect his books together in odd theoretical ways like that.
I don't really have an answer because I don't think it's canon that everyone has powers, but I know that in Carrie, the way that it ends is by some random second or third cousin in a southern state is related to Carrie. And then so much of this, I just like to pretend that Carrie's abilities are some form of The Shining that she just internalized and let destroy her, but that's just me. And then
I'm just more of a fan of you never know who's going to get it. And I like how with Carrie, it was her distant relative and they were related. And then at the end of The Shining, they were related again. Like, just keep them strangers. Let them have a meaningful relationship that way. They don't need to have some touching family reunion. Oh, now I have to go to every birthday and Christmas party now. I'm part of the family.
I think Dan needed it in a way because he doesn't have anyone else now. He needed an actual physical relationship.
Billy's life.
Yeah, but he needed an actual family. Billy's like 79, on the verge of death.
He had a chance at starting a family, though, with the cocaine baby, and it was like, nah, fuck that.
Gross. I don't ever like that. No. Okay, we'll just disagree on this one. Okay, so what would you rate it out of 10?
Out of 10, I would rate Dr. Sleep a 6.2.
Whoa. Why?
Yeah. When I started reading it at the beginning, I felt like Dan was going to be a repeat of his dad and wasn't that into it. Couldn't really wrap my head around the Knott's been here for forever, but there was no mentioning of them in The Shining when he had more steam than he did now, and Dan would use his steam, and the Knot could never find him, but they could always find Abra. And I started to get back on board, and then it lost me again with the family thing. I was like, no, I couldn't really absorb into the story for this one. And because it was a good story, but it was slow paced, and everything was kind of distant and just not my cup of tea. Stop snickering at me. If you wanted my opinion, and you got it.
Okay, so my rating is actually 9 out of 10 because I felt like it was a good continuation of the other story. There was more of a redemptive quality to this one than there was in The Shining. I actually enjoyed the family connection. I loved the AA aspect of it because he could have literally just been his dad as a repeat, but he decided that he didn't want to be his dad. So he overcame that whole generational struggle. And then there was redemption for Jack in a crazy way where he pushed, what's-her-face? He pushed Rose off the landing and then killed her. So, like, Jack actually had some sort of redemption, which was nice because I hated him in the first book. I legitimately hated that man in the first book, and I didn't understand why Dan liked him so much. I don't necessarily like him now, but I feel like he finally got a good redemptive story closing. I also liked I just think Abra really brought something to the Shining universe by showing us that there are other abilities, and then the True Knot was really cool because you got to see all of their abilities. But I just felt like...
Yeah, go ahead.
What? Well, I felt like this story was a good sequel, but I felt like it lacked any sort of emotional connection for me, and that's why it's not a 10. Is because I didn't feel like I really felt as much as I should have about these characters. Anyway, so that's mine.
All right. Well, agree to disagree and consider it your. I don't think it was that high, but maybe I'm just.
I also watched the movie, which was a really good movie, and it was a good sequel to the 1980 version of The Shining. But it didn't follow the book after like the last 30 minutes, but that's because I feel like they spent the last 30 minutes fixing all of the problems from the 1980 movie.
Yeah,
So
I didn't see the book, or the movies. I only read the books, so
yeah,
I can't testify to that. Did they have the twins in Doctor Sleep as they did in the first one, though?
yeah, they brought all of the characters back. They even brought Jack back. It was the same building, same hotel. They had a little tiny version of Danny. The 1980 version, you might not know, but the 1980 version, they have Tony, but only as like this creepy voice and this finger puppet. They don't actually use Tony the way he's supposed to be used in the book. So in Doctor Sleep, they didn't even use Tony this time around, which I felt was a really good choice. And then they had, so the way that Rose gets killed in the movie version of Doctor Sleep is they're back at the Overlook, but they're in the Overlook Hotel. They're not at the Overlook Cottage, and they're not at the what is it called? The top of the world. What is the place called?
I can't
Edge
remember.
of the world, edge of the world, top of the world, side of the world, something like that. But they're not there. Because in the 1980 version of The Shining, the place didn't burn down. It's still there, and Danny locked away all the ghosts in his head. And so to defeat Rose, he takes her into the Overlook Hotel, and he releases the ghosts back inside the Overlook, and he says that they're starving, so they eat her.
Ah.
Yeah.
I think I kind of would have liked that in the book more.
Yeah, and so they changed the ending of the
whole
movie.
Plot with Abra, long distance, like copycat.
They did all of that.
Oh, they did do all of that?
Like
the
whole book is exactly the same, but instead of when she gets kidnapped, Dan actually takes her to the Overlook Hotel instead of leaving her back at her house. So she's projecting. Also, they killed the dad in the movie, but
I kind of wanted one of them, either the mom or the dad, to I wanted them not to murder an important character or side character, and they didn't. And I was a little disappointed in that.
Yeah, the deaths were a lot more gruesome in the movie, which I thought was really cool.
I'm looking forward to it.
but yeah, so the way that Rose dies, she thinks that she has the upper hand on Dan, and they're on the stairwell with the axe the same way that
I have the high ground.
Yeah, well, the same way that Jack and Wendy were in the first one. Now it's Rose and Dan does this weird thing where he traps her and Abra in his mind version of the Overlook in the maze. And so they're like chopping Rose bit by bit, and she's like, wait a minute, this isn't your head, this is someone else's. And then she realizes it's Dan's head. And so they all jump back outside of his head and back into the actual Overlook. And she starts eating his steam. And then she reads his mind, and she's like, well, what are all of these cases? Why are these cases in your head? What are you hiding? I bet it's really good. And she's like, and he's like, no, it's actually, you know what? I'm going to use this right now, and I'm going to let them all out. And she realizes what's happening because all the ghosts appear back in the Overlook and, like, jump on top of her and start ripping her skin off. Yeah.
Curiosity killed the cat.
But then they turn on Dan, and the hotel embodies him the way that it embodies his dad. And so he takes the axe and runs through the hotel and starts hunting down Abra the same way that his dad did. And she goes, "You're just a false face," which, I mean, she would say that because that's how the first one should have ended. But she's like, "You're just a false face. You're just the hotel. You're not actually Dan." And then Dan does what his dad does in the book and is like, "Let me save you." And then he turns on the boiler and he blows up the Overlook the way that the first movie was supposed to end.
So does Dan not live in the movie?
Oh, Dan dies at the end of the movie.
Yay, main character died. I feel that every successful horror movie needs to have a main character die.
Yeah, and
it's
then
like,
Abra,
I feel it's an absolute like rule that must be met.
Well, he does what Dick does to Dan, and he goes and talks to her after he dies. So it's like the whole full circle thing where she's like, "I'm talking to my Uncle Dan," and her mom's like, "Okay." And that's like how the movie ends.
I will have to see. Was the movie better than you thought it would be?
Yeah, it was a pretty good movie. I don't know if it was better than I thought it would be, but it was a good movie.
Okay.
So that's that. Yeah. I guess we can go ahead and end it. So that's the end of the podcast.
It's all over for now. Okay,
Okay, bye.
bye.